business can begin. So welcome to what is going to be a pretty quick video that I thought I'd do just in case I'm unable to post a video for a few more weeks. I know it's the Hobonichi spring start season. Everybody's stoked to get their week set up. And I had a pretty good system going for a while that I've iterated on a bit that I thought I'd share, because when I do use the Hobonichi Weeks, this system has served me very, very well. The nature of my job is that it doesn't always add up for me to have a separate planner if I need to be meticulously tracking my tasks in some sort of application online. Every couple of weeks or months, there's potential for my project to change. So I just do what I need to do. And when I'm a little bit more self-directed, I really do prefer to use a paper planner that I can have as a physical reference at the side of my desk that doesn't really introduce the risk of other distractions on my screens. Before I get into it, I have a couple of rules of engagement around using a paper planner for work. Better to be safe than sorry around not including any sort of proprietary or materially relevant information in this book. For a while, I thought I'd be taking notes in the back about a bunch of client things, and now I mostly use that for notes related to my career goals and things like that. And I keep all of my client notes on my computer, which are backed up and behind like 900 firewalls. If I were to lose my book, not a big deal. So just kind of out of respect, where possible, I use code names for my clients or just use initials for names. I'm not always perfect at that. Like sometimes a Matthew or a Jenny might sneak in there, but nobody really knows who those are so long as I'm making sure to not write my client names down in my Hobonichi. So that's just a thing for my job is important. Might not matter at all for you, in which case go crazy. Do whatever you like. Those are just my rules. Before we get into the spread, I'll just talk about the calendar section, basically to track when I get paid and if I go into the office and how I traveled there, because I may be able to expense it. So that's what I use this section for. For like a typical kind of spread, this is what it looks like. This left-hand column is just a listing of events that I have on a certain day. I don't really put times associated with them because they tend to change, and most of that's better managed through notifications in my calendar. If I have something particularly early morning, I might mention it, or if there's something from my personal life that might impact my workday, I'll also put that in that column as well. Like I had to go take my car to the shop on Tuesday morning, so I made sure to let people know, hey, just in case I'm late, that's why, kind of thing. Then I have this second column here, which is my highlight. So that's a term that I borrowed from Jake Knapp and John Zeratsky's book, Make Time, which is a really fantastic kind of productivity book that's all about having really good boundaries with your work, with technology, with all kinds of things in order to make time for what matters. So I kind of reinterpret what they talk about in the book to pertain to what is the highlight of my workday. But I find that as long as I feel accomplished in my workday, I feel settled and ready to take on other priorities outside of that in my spare time, such as making these videos. So I kind of use it as like this weird inception system for Make Time. I'll link the book below. I really liked it. It also has a fantastic list of activities that you can do instead of scrolling your phone and other kind of really good self-care and technology boundaries ideas. So definitely check it out if that's something that sounds resonant to you. And then this third column is pretty boring. It's just other things that I could work on that day column. Down here below, I have two areas. These are kind of ongoing side of desk projects that aren't specifically related to my client work, and they're not particularly time bound. So I just kind of keep them there to remember that they're stuff to think about. All right, so now to the exciting part. So this is where this list of signifiers starts coming into play. I use the Hobonichi Weeks system a little bit differently than I do my other bullet journal. It's just kind of how it's worked out for me over the years. Basically, I write down any kind of tasks that I have to work on that week in this column along with a dot. And this is kind of the state of the task columns. If the task has been completed, it's X'd. If it's started, it gets slashed. And if it's not started, it's just still a dot. That's where I will put pushed and postponed signifiers as well at the end of the week, which I actually haven't done yet this week. I will mark those in there to make sure that I have a cue to know to migrate that into the next spread. Next, we'll talk actually about these 5 columns. So I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I only work 5 days a week. When I work on a task, I'll put a dot on that day. And this really comes into play during where I work, we have what's called a daily stand-up. It's kind of like a daily meeting where you talk about what you worked on the day before, what you're planning on working on today, and finally, if there's any kind of important things you need to bring up or need help unblocking yourself with, or some other kind of important issue. So I kind of have that all sorted through here. So when stand-up comes around, it's really easy for me to know what to say. I don't have to like remember to write down a list, or I won't forget things that are important because of this system. This is how this works. If it was like Wednesday, I could see what I worked on Tuesday based on this column. I would have written in here at that point what I intended to work on that day. So I'll tell people this is what I'm planning on working on. If I end up working on it, I'll put a dot in there. And then if I have any kind of important thing or question or some other kind of blocker, and I'll get to all those signifiers in a bit, I'll put that in that column, and potentially if it's like urgent and important, also in this column. So this column exists as like a specific kind of alarm bell column where if something's at risk of not being done for whatever reason, or it's really important to answer this question, I'll kind of use a signifier in there to back up what's going on in here. So I only really use that column if it's like super important. So some of the signifiers, I actually picked out some spreads in this book that I can show you how they're used in practice. But before we do that, I'll kind of go over what they mean. So again, a task is over here, it's just like a task started, completed. Over here, the dot means that I worked towards that task. A deadline, I'll put like a bracket around that day if that thing needs to be completed on that day. So it will be due the next day or whatever. I'll have pushed or migrated. So basically it's the end of the week. So anything that I haven't worked on here is going to get a chevron, and then I'll carry that over into the next week's spread. Postponed is something that is specific to when I have been asked to work on something else in lieu of a thing. I still eventually have to do it, just not right now. It's not the priority anymore. So that also kind of fits in with canceled, which is this little like skull and bones dude, which is basically that I was told by someone that that is no longer within my scope of work and I don't need to do that anymore. I do kind of want to know that rather than just cross it out, because it's just an extra element of information to make sure that, you know, I'm not dropping any balls on any. And sometimes I'll even make note if, you know, a specific person asked me in this meeting to no longer finish that thing that I was working on for whatever reason, because they want to deploy me on something else. Some other signifiers, and these come into play in this area, but will occasionally show up in the urgent column, are blocked, waiting on, dependency, question, and my new one, shout out. So blocked is basically that I cannot finish that thing for whatever reason. Like I need some kind of external support or something needs to happen in order for that thing to get done. And then there's 2 subsets of blocked. Before I kind of color in the box, I might have a waiting on, which just means that I'm waiting on something to come back to me in order to cross it off my list. That's like an approval, a list we need to include in something. And then dependency is kind of a variation on that, in which I'm waiting on some kind of information in order to do work on that task. So I can't really start that task until I get something. So in a lot of ways, these are similar. It's kind of hard to explain how they're different. And sometimes there is like what is a clear dependency versus a waiting on, and that's kind of where it matters, especially if I can get help on getting that dependency cleared out or on getting that thing that I'm waiting for accelerated in some way. So that's where those 2 come into play. And then I have question or follow-up, which I only put questions and follow-ups in here because when I'm in stand-up, I won't miss it. I'll have this open. I'll see, oh, I have a question about like, oh, confirm where the documents are located and get invited to that SharePoint or whatever it is. I'll know that on Tuesday's stand-up, or maybe it was, I think it was probably on Tuesday stand-up, I had to get clarity on where the stuff is located. And I did. And guess what? It got done. And then a new thing that I'm doing is shout out. If somebody does something awesome and I want to give them a high five in a meeting, I'll put a little heart. That's like a new thing that I thought of doing. I just think it's a nice move. And I'm going to try and remember to do that and maybe give people a shout out, at least once a week, make it a little goal for myself. And then I already talked about canceled. So that's basically how the Hobonichi Weeks works. And I guess what I'll do then is go on time lapse and set up next week's spread and migrate some of this stuff over as the chill portion of this video. I hope this was helpful in some way. Oh, I did kind of mark off a couple of spreads that I felt comfortable sharing from previous years. So here's an example of, I was using like a special signifier system to indicate the type of meeting or event that it was. And I might go back to that because in a lot of ways it reminds me of the social tracking that I'm doing in my Filofax. Sometimes I just use this bottom section for notes. And here you can see some of those other signifiers at play. And then, here you see another example of some more blockers. Oh, something's getting postponed. More blockers, something that I'm now waiting on. Like that probably means that I was stuck and then somebody else took it on. And I just use it as I need it. And it's a great little system. And again, it doesn't always make sense for me to use it. I have big blank spots in here, but when I need it, I love it. So that's my Hobonichi Weeks for work. And I'll now get into the vibey part of the video. Thanks again for your attention and for all of your support of my channel. I really, really appreciate it and have been having actually quite a lot of fun doing it. So take care and talk to you soon. Hey everyone, so it is Thursday evening. I thought I'd provide a quick update on my system. I actually realized that I should probably migrate this now before I head off on a 3 or 4 day, possibly 5 day weekend, which is really exciting. That will include the celestial sequence of the total solar eclipse on Monday and potentially the full moon on Tuesday. Well, the full moon on Tuesday. I might have that day off. I'm trying to negotiate that right now, and I'll find out tomorrow. Tomorrow at the sauna and ice bath place that I'm going to in the morning that I'm really excited for. So how did the system work out this week? It worked great. Same as last week, kind of same idea. I had my events just keep me on track. Everything ended up getting reshuffled, so I don't know how useful that is, but it's nice to kind of start the day with a sort of plan. Having this on my desk is just so handy. I always know kind of what to work on. I just look over here and something useful will pop up. And I have decided that I like to keep this work to-do list separate from my personal. If I have time to work on something personal, great. I'll take it out when I have break time. Just keeps me focused in a way that the other system does not. So yeah, otherwise, a couple cool signifiers showed up this week. We had some stuff get postponed, bunch of questions. I'm waiting on stuff. I forgot to do a shout out, so I'm going to make sure that I migrate that to the top of next week's list and just make sure that I do it. And this system of knowing what I worked on which day is just so convenient and easy to follow during any sort of update or status meetings. It's just great. So yeah, everything's going well. I'm gonna stick with the Hobonichi Weeks for work for the foreseeable future. And yeah, continue to iterate on the system if I decide to do so, though right now I'm feeling pretty solid with it. So I hope you have a great weekend. Let me know if you too are going to go check out the eclipse anywhere cool, or if you've seen one before. I actually saw the one in 2017. I was out in Oregon with a bunch of friends, some of whom I may see this weekend. Still trying to work out what's feasible for me in terms of travel this weekend and how far actually makes sense for me to go. But I have some options, so that's nice. And yeah, I hope you have a fantastic weekend and everything is going great. And we will see you in another video at some point. Thank you so much. Take care, be well, stay cool, stay reflective, and see you in the future.